Now, gang violence didn't cause the summer riots in England, but it was a factor, according to the Home Secretary, as she announced new measures to deal with it. These include earlier intervention to turn lives around and tighter firearms laws. But the police, especially the Met, have been using a tactic of their own, the law of joint enterprise. This allows people to be convicted of serious offences even if they took no direct part in a crime. Critics say it's led to a flood of miscarriage of justice cases, and the number of those cases continues to increase. MPs are now investigating how widely the law is being used and whether it's being abused. Liz McKean reports.
Like summer itself, the violence of August was over very quickly. In its wake is a lingering bad feeling. Anger towards the looters and arsonists responsible for such lawlessness. But also anger from people who feel their grievances are unheard. No one at this youth centre in West London pretends to have any quick answers, but they all share a concern about a dusty old legal principle called joint enterprise, introduced 300 years ago, which many believe played a part in stirring up our cities.
I know some young boys who have probably been hit with this joint enterprise charge, and having been in the criminal system at the age of 13, 14, will come out at the age of 26, and most of their adult life they've spent in prison. So obviously coming out, I'm not too sure whether they are going to be able to change things around.
And that was the alienation, you think, that we saw during the riots?
It was part of it, I believe.
All around the country, people, some of them very young, are serving lengthy sentences under joint enterprise. Its use means they can be charged with serious offences like murder, even if they didn't wield a knife or land a punch. I've been told of cases where they weren't even at the scene of the crime. Here in West London, people have told me it's causing huge resentment against the police. But the police say it's led to breakthroughs against gangs and the sort of violence that's marred some of the lives around here. The Met Police see joint enterprise as a valuable weapon in the fight against knife crime. They're showing this DVD in schools, warning youngsters about what can happen if they get involved with people who carry out violence. If it's suspected they could have foreseen what happened, they too can be charged with the same offence.
What I make no apologies about is how we have used this as a principle to get across what we hope is a positive, constructive, educative message, which is about the most important thing we can do in these sad events is stop someone from being stabbed or killed.
Is there a danger, do you think, that some particular groups of people, particularly young, often black youths, are going to feel unfairly targeted?
Well, I can understand that, and that has been said to us, and it would be foolish not to listen to that. But I think in return to that, we'd say this, that this is an application of a principle of law which actually is very carefully applied in a very considered and detailed way, and it has a very high evidential test.
But it has long been controversial. In one of the most notorious cases of joint enterprise, portrayed here in Peter Medak's film Let Him Have It, Derek Bentley, aged 19, was hanged for the murder of a policeman during a robbery.
Let him have it, Chris!
These were the words allegedly spoken by Bentley which helped convict him of the shooting, even though it was carried out by another teenager. Joint enterprise was also used to convict 3 teenagers of the murder of Garry Newlove, whose savage assault by drunken youths was seen as proof of David Cameron's broken Britain. The coroner found he died from a single kick, but all 3 are serving life for murder. One of them, Jordan Cunliffe, was 15 at the time. Mr. Newlove's widow has said his sentence is entirely justified.
Life should mean life. If you're saying that Jordan Cunliffe did not attack my husband, he certainly stood next to that body and watched her beaten and beaten. You're as guilty as a person because you're watching that act. You're guilty of that act.
But Jordan Cunliffe's mother believes joint enterprise is being used to convict those only peripherally involved in a crime, or, as she claims in her son's case, simply in the wrong place.
Jordan had an eye condition, meant that he wouldn't have been able to see what was going on, and he wouldn't have been able to sort of predict that there was any violence, so therefore he couldn't sort of show withdrawal, and he couldn't prevent it.
Janet Cunliffe shows me new medical evidence which she wants to use to appeal against her son's conviction. It's a computer program which shows the scene of Mr. Newlove's murder and what Jordan would allegedly have seen because of his failing eyesight.
That's the evidence that we want to use to prove that he couldn't possibly have been part of a joint enterprise.
As they tackle knife crime, the Met Police admit they're using joint enterprise more often. But Johannes Scarlett, a student from West London, says young people feel they're being targeted.
From what I have seen in the past, and from cases which I know of joint enterprise, they do spend quite a lot of time building up a case, but it seems to be almost easier to build up a case or joint enterprise because you have to prove that they were intended to do it. It's almost like gets rid of the whole guilty, innocent before proven guilty sort of thing. It's almost like you're guilty, now prove to us you're innocent.
At a local youth centre, Johannes introduces me to youth workers and visitors. They all believe that young people living on estates are being criminalised.
You didn't stab anyone, you didn't know the knife was present, but the person's died. And in under joint enterprise, you've all been convicted. So you come out with murder under your name, you're never going to get a job. Then what do?
People have been damaged by the joint enterprise situation. Like, if they wasn't involved, the police they wouldn't take their side for it.
Do you know people this has happened to?
Yeah, quite a few people.
There are also concerns that the law is being used too selectively against gang violence when there are other contexts where it could apply.
If the law of joint enterprise were applied to phone hacking, we probably wouldn't have so much of a concern about getting precise evidence about who's been involved in phone hacking or who's been encouraging phone hacking.
The problem with investigating joint enterprise is it's very difficult to find out how widely it's being used. We've looked all over the place. The Law Commission, the Crown Prosecution Service, the Ministry of Justice, individual police forces like the Met who are looking into the riots, and no one has anything approaching complete figures. That is apart from campaigners who claim that they are dealing with a surge of miscarriage of justice cases. The group JENGbA says it's fighting 256 cases. Of these, 215 prisoners are serving life for murder. 13% of those are under the age of 18, while 25% were under 21 when convicted. And 59% are from black and ethnic minority communities. Establishing some facts is the first priority of an MP's inquiry into joint enterprise, which is holding hearings this week.
This is a very blunt instrument. It's got appalling consequences if innocent people are to be found guilty under this doctrine. And I'm very concerned about its use at the moment. I stress it's a personal opinion. The committee is yet to decide on any of it. But we have had a lot of concern from several corners. And to target youngsters, I think, is doubly inappropriate.
But police are confident the law is helping to keep young people away from trouble and has even had an impact on levels of knife crime in London. The number of young people being killed in knife attacks is going down in London, and you think one reason for that is the use of the joint enterprise law?
It is one of many reasons. It's not a silver bullet. I don't think we've ever said that this is the measure that's going to unlock everything. If you know, that comes across as that is completely wrong. What I think we have to do in London is put together a whole series of tactics, programs, messages which actually says don't get involved in violence.
The police say that joint enterprise has at least helped bring down knife crime.
Just saying that because you're going to be done for joint enterprise is going to scare these kids from carrying knives is a big lie. The realness of it is that if someone that young boys believe had a problem with them had a weapon, what are you most likely to do? What would the normal boys do in the area?
Start arming yourself with things.
Protect yourself.
Would they worry about the joint enterprise law?
No.
Would that even be a thought? And that's really the thing we have to tackle, is the need of weapons as protection.
The use and possible abuse of joint enterprise is not just being investigated by MPs. Potentially more decisive will be a Supreme Court judgment due later this year, where the way joint enterprise is used to take on gangs is very much on trial.